The silence on the left side of the aisle was heavy with judgment, but the silence on the right was absolute. 70 chairs, arranged in perfect rows at the Cedar and Crane Conservatory, sat completely empty. No mother, no brothers, not even my father. The only message he had sent me arrived at 3:12 in the morning, a single line that felt less like a goodbye and more like a sentence. You made your choice. The light coming through the sheer curtains of the bridal suite at the Larkspur Hotel was exactly the kind of light brides prayed for. It was a pale, clean gold. The sort of morning sun that promised high humidity later in the day, but offered a crisp, cinematic perfection for the immediate future. I lay still in the center of the king-sized bed, listening to the hum of the city waking up outside. Harrow Glen was not a large city, but downtown had a rhythm, a low murmur of traffic and distant construction that usually comforted me. Today, however, the silence inside the room felt louder than anything outside of it. I was 33 years old. I had paid for this room myself. I had paid for the dress hanging on the back of the door, a silk crepe gown that cost $2,000, money I had saved by skipping lunches and taking freelance copy editing jobs on weekends. I had paid for the deposit on the Cedar and Crane Conservatory. I was proud of that. For the first time in my life, I was doing something massive without my father's signature on a check, without my mother's passive-aggressive commentary on the cost of floral arrangements, and without the heavy, suffocating strings that came attached to Perez family generosity. This was my fresh start. I rolled over, my heart doing a nervous flutter in my chest. I reached for my phone on the nightstand. I expected a deluge. That was the tradition in our family, or at least, the performance of it. On big days, graduations, promotions, the day I bought my condo in Merrow Heights, the family group chat usually exploded. My mother would send strings of heart emojis. My brothers, Evan and Luke, would send chaotic, teasing gifs. My father would send a stiff but affectionate message about family honor. I tapped the screen. There were no notifications from WhatsApp, no missed calls, no Instagram tags. The screen was starkly empty, except for a single text message notification sitting on the lock screen. It was from my father. The timestamp read 3:12 in the morning. I frowned, rubbing the sleep from my eyes. 3:12 was late, even for him. He was a man of strict schedules. Up at 5, asleep by 10. I unlocked the phone and opened the message. It was 4 words. You made your choice. I stared at the letters. They were black against the white background, clinical and final. There was no punctuation at the end, which somehow made it worse. It did not read like an angry outburst. It read like a verdict. I sat up, the sheet pooling around my waist. I typed a reply, my thumbs hovering over the glass. Dad? What does that mean? Are you guys on the way? I watched the screen. The message status changed to delivered. It did not change to read. I waited 1 minute, 2, nothing. A cold prickle of unease started at the base of my neck. I told myself I was being paranoid. It was a wedding day. Emotions were high. Maybe he was referring to the seating chart dispute we had 3 weeks ago, or the fact that I had insisted on a secular officiant. My father held grudges like other men held stocks. He let them mature over time. But he never missed a show, and that was what a wedding was to Martin Perez. A show. A demonstration of family unity and status. He would not miss the chance to walk me down the aisle in front of 200 people, including his business rivals. I swiped out of the message and checked the group chat. The last message was from me, 2 days ago, sending the final timeline. It sat there, unacknowledged. Fine, I whispered to the empty room. Be dramatic. I tossed the phone onto the duvet and got out of bed. I was not going to let his mood swings dictate the rhythm of my morning. This was the day I married Graham. This was the day I became a Holt, moving into a family that, while a bit stiff and overly concerned with appearances, at least seemed to function without the constant emotional extortion I was used to. I showered, scrubbing my skin until it was pink, trying to wash away the 3 a.m. text. When I stepped out, wrapped in a plush robe, there was a knock at the door. Mina Crowley breezed in before I could even fully open it. She was carrying 3 coffees, a garment bag, and an energy that felt manic enough to power the entire hotel. "Happy wedding day!" she screamed, kicking the door shut behind her with a practiced heel. "Do not look at my under-eye bags." I was up until 2 fighting with the caterer about the napkin folds. Apparently, the fan fold is out and the pocket fold is in, and I had to threaten to leave a 1-star review to get them to switch it. She shoved a cup of coffee into my hand. "Drink. You look pale. Are you freaking out?" "You are allowed to freak out, but only for 10 minutes, and then we have to start hair and makeup." I took the cup, the warmth seeping into my cold fingers. Mina had been my best friend since sophomore year of college. She knew where the bodies were buried. She knew about the time my father cut off my tuition because I changed my major to English, and she knew how hard I had worked to get it back. "I am okay," I said, forcing a smile. "Just tired." Mina stopped unpacking her makeup kit and looked at me. Really looked at me. "Did you hear from them?" she asked, her voice dropping an octave. I took a sip of the coffee. It was bitter and hot. "Dad sent a weird text," I admitted. "What kind of weird?" "Just vague." I shrugged, trying to keep it light. "You know him. He probably thinks I chose the wrong finger foods and is punishing me with silence until he has a martini in his hand." Mina rolled her eyes. Classic Martin. "Well, screw him. Today isn't about him. It is about you and Graham and the fact that you look like a supermodel even without concealer. Now, sit." The next 2 hours were a blur of hairspray, contouring powder, and Mina's curated playlist of early 2000 pop hits. I let myself be handled. I let myself be painted and pinned, but every time Mina turned away to grab a brush, my eyes darted to my phone. Still nothing. By the time we got to the Cedar and Crane Conservatory, the anxiety was no longer a prickle. It was a stone in my stomach. The venue was breathtaking. It was a restored glasshouse filled with tropical plants, vaulted ceilings, and natural light. It was expensive, elegant, and exactly the kind of place my mother would usually be critiquing loudly within 5 minutes of arrival, but she wasn't there. I walked into the bridal holding room, a small, private parlor off the main entrance. My dress was heavy. The train looped over my arm. "Mina," I said, turning to her, "has anyone seen my brother?" Evan was supposed to help with the ushers. Mina hesitated. She was adjusting the strap of her bridesmaid dress, but her fingers were fumbling. "I haven't seen him yet," she said, not meeting my eyes, "but guests are just starting to arrive. It is still early." "Bella." I checked the clock on the wall. It was 1 hour before the ceremony. The Perez family was never late. My father considered punctuality a moral virtue. "I need to make a call," I said. "Bella, you are the bride. You are not supposed to be making calls. I need to call my mother." I stepped into the hallway, away from the bustling of the florist staff and the string quartet tuning their instruments. I dialed my mother's cell phone. It rang, and rang, and rang. Then, the click. "You have reached the voicemail of Diane Perez. Please leave a message." Her voice sounded cheerful. "Recorded on a better day." "Mom," I said, hating how small my voice sounded. "It is Bella. I am at the venue. I need to know where you guys are. Please call me." I hung up and immediately dialed Evan. My older brother was the reliable one, the one who usually smoothed things over between me and Dad. The phone didn't even ring. "We are sorry. The number you have dialed is temporarily unavailable. Please try your call again later." I pulled the phone away from my ear and stared at it. Unavailable? Evan was a real estate agent. His phone was surgically attached to his hand. He never turned it off, and he certainly never let his service lapse. I tried Luke, my baby brother, the one I had defended on the playground, the one I had helped with homework, the one whose secrets I had kept for 20 years. Straight to voicemail. I stood there in the hallway, the scent of lilies and floor wax thick in the air. A passing waiter nodded at me, smiling at the bride. But I felt like a ghost. This wasn't normal. This wasn't just a family fight. This was a blackout. I went back into the bridal room. Mina was looking at her phone, her brow furrowed. She snapped her head up when I entered. "Is everything okay?" she asked. Too quickly. "They are not answering." I said, "None of them." Mina bit her lip. "Okay, maybe they are driving. Signal is bad near the hills. They live 20 minutes away." "Mina, there are no hills." Before she could answer, there was a knock at the door. A young man in a generic uniform stood there, holding a tablet and a thick plain envelope. "Isabella Perez?" he asked. "Yes? Courier delivery. Sign here, please." I frowned. Deliveries usually went to the loading dock. I scribbled my signature on the tablet, my hand shaking slightly. He handed me the envelope and left. It was light, no return address, just my name typed on the front. I tore it open. Inside was a single sheet of paper. It was a notice from North Spire Credit Union. "Dear Ms. Perez, this notice is to inform you that your checking account ending in 4492 has been restricted pending verification of recent activity. Please contact our fraud department immediately to restore access." Restricted? I stared at the paper. That was my main account. The account I used to pay for everything. "Mina," I said, my voice rising. "My bank account is frozen." "What?" Mina grabbed the paper from my hand. "Why would they freeze it today?" "Did you make a big purchase?" "I paid the caterer yesterday." I said, "But that was authorized. I called them beforehand." My phone buzzed. It was a text from the florist, who was currently setting up the arch in the main hall. "Hi, Bella. So sorry to bother you, but the card on file just declined for the final payment. It is $300 for the extra peonies. Can we try another card?" I felt the blood drain from my face. It was humiliating, visceral. Hot shame flooded my chest. I had been so careful. I had budgeted down to the cent. I had built a firewall between my finances and my family so that this, exactly this, could never happen. "I need to go out there," I said. "Bella, you can't go out there in your dress." I ignored her. I gathered up my skirt and marched out of the bridal room, down the corridor, and into the main conservatory space. The room was filling up. I saw people I knew, college friends, co-workers, Graham's cousins. They turned to look as I appeared, smiling, waving. I kept my head down, cutting through the side aisle toward where the florist was working on the altar. Graham was already there. He looked impeccable in his tuxedo, his hair perfectly coiffed, his posture relaxed. He was speaking to the florist, a frantic woman holding a portable card reader. "Graham," I said, breathless. He turned. His smile was easy, polished. It was the smile that had charmed me 2 years ago, the smile of a man who never had to worry about an overdraft fee in his life. "Bella," he said, "you are not supposed to be out here. Bad luck. Remember?" My card declined. I said, the words tasting like ash. The bank froze my account. I don't know why. "I have the money. Graham, I swear." Graham's expression didn't change. He didn't look concerned. He didn't look angry. He looked patient, like he was dealing with a child who had spilled juice on the carpet. "It is okay, sweetheart," he said. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a sleek black metal card. He handed it to the florist. "Put it on this," he said to her. "Add a 20% tip for the trouble." The florist looked relieved. "Thank you, Mr. Holt." Graham turned back to me. He reached out and tucked a loose strand of hair behind my ear. His fingers were cool. "Don't worry about it, Bella," he said softly. "These things happen. They don't happen to me," I said, and I heard the defensive edge in my voice. "I manage my money. Graham, I don't know why this is happening." He smiled again, a tight, small smile. "We will sort it out later." He said, "Go hide. You are ruining the reveal." He turned back to the florist, dismissing me. I stood there for a second, feeling a wave of nausea. He had paid it. He had saved the moment. I should have been grateful. But I didn't feel grateful. I felt managed. I felt like the power dynamic in our relationship, which I had fought so hard to keep level, had just tilted violently in his favor. I was the chaotic girl with the frozen assets. He was the savior with the black card. I turned and walked back toward the bridal room. As I passed the rows of chairs, I looked at the seating arrangement. The right side of the aisle, the groom's side, was packed. A sea of expensive hats and dark suits. The left side, my side, was empty, completely empty. I stopped. The first 3 rows were reserved for family. There were handwritten cards on the seats. Mother of the bride, father of the bride, brother of the bride. The cards sat on the white cushions, undisturbed. Behind them, the rows for my extended family, aunts, uncles, cousins from the city, were also empty. It was a vacuum, a physical gap in the room that screamed silence. I felt a hand on my arm. It was Mina. She had followed me out. "Bella, come back inside," she whispered. "Where are they?" I whispered back. "Mina, where is everyone?" "Maybe there is traffic," she said, but her voice was weak. 70 people? I asked. 70 people are stuck in traffic? I let her pull me back into the bridal room. The air in there felt stifling now. I paced the length of the small rug. 3:12 a.m., I said. "You made your choice. That is what he wrote." "Bella, stop," Mina said. She was scrolling through her phone, her thumb moving fast. "What are you doing?" I asked. "Checking the traffic," she said. "Just to see?" She went silent. Her thumb stopped moving, the color drained from her face, leaving her makeup standing out in stark relief. "Mina?" She looked up at me. Her eyes were wide, terrified. "Bella." She said, "What?" She turned the phone screen toward me. It was a local news alert from the Harrow Glen Daily Wire. The headline was in bold red letters. "Authorities confirm multi-vehicle incident on Briarhook Parkway." I stared at the words. Briarhook Parkway. That was the main road leading out of my parents' neighborhood. It was the only direct route from their house to the highway. I snatched the phone from her hand. Reports indicate a serious collision involving a private transport van and several passenger vehicles. Emergency crews are on the scene. Traffic is halted in both directions. My knees gave out. I didn't fall, but I sank onto the nearest chair, the silk of my dress crushing around me. "Briarhook," I whispered. "They take Briarhook." "Oh my God," Mina said, covering her mouth. "Oh my God. Bella, that is why they aren't here." "The text," I said, my mind spinning. The text was at 3 a.m. The accident. When was the accident? The article said, "Breaking news. Posted 12 minutes ago." I scrambled for my phone. I dialed 911. I didn't care that it wasn't my emergency. I needed to know. "Dispatcher. What is your emergency?" "I need information on the accident on Briarhook Parkway." I gasped. "My family lives there." They were driving this way. "Please, are there names?" "Ma'am, I cannot release information about active scenes," the dispatcher said, her voice calm and robotic. "Please," I screamed. "My name is Bella Perez. My father is Martin Perez." "Are they involved?" "I cannot confirm names at this time. If you are concerned about a relative, please contact the local hospitals in 1 hour." 1 hour. I hung up. The silence in the room was now roaring. "They are hurt." I said, "Mina, they are hurt. That is why nobody is here." "But the text," Mina said, confused. "Why did he text you that at 3 a.m.? "I don't know," I yelled. Maybe he was angry then. And then they left. And then I stood up. "I have to go." "Bella, you can't leave. The ceremony starts in 6 minutes. My family might be dying on the side of the road." I ran to the door. I threw it open. Marjorie Holt was standing there. Graham's mother was a small woman, made of steel wire and pearls. She was blocking the doorway, her hands clasped in front of her perfectly tailored navy gown. "Bella," she said. She didn't look at my face. She looked at my dress, then at my hair, then finally at my eyes. "Marjorie, there is an accident," I stammered, "on Briarhook. My family. Nobody is here. I think they are in the accident." Marjorie didn't move. She didn't gasp. She didn't reach out to comfort me. "Yes," she said. "We heard there was traffic trouble." "Traffic trouble? People could be dead." "Bella, lower your voice," Marjorie said. She stepped into the room and closed the door behind her, effectively trapping me with her. Guests can hear you. I don't care. I have to go to them. You will do no such thing, Marjorie said. Her voice was ice. I stopped. The sheer authority in her tone froze me. Look at me, she said. I looked at her. Graham is waiting at the altar, she said. 200 guests are sitting in that hall. The caterers are paid. The music is playing. My family. If your family is in an accident, Marjorie said, cutting me off. There is nothing you can do for them in a wedding dress on the side of a highway. The police handle accidents. We handle this. She took a step closer. We can still do this gracefully. Bella. The word hung in the air, gracefully. It sounded like a threat. She wasn't talking about a wedding. She was talking about a public relations crisis. She looked at me not as a daughter-in-law, terrified for her parents, but as a liability, a hysterical woman who needed to be managed so the Holts wouldn't be embarrassed. Graham knows. I realized he knows about the empty seats. He knows about the accident. That is why he was so calm. They aren't here, Marjorie said, softer now, but with zero warmth, whether it is traffic or something else. They are not coming. Bella, you have to walk down that aisle alone. Can you do that? Or are you going to crumble? I stared at her. I thought of my father's text. You made your choice. If they were dead. Would he have texted that? If they were hurt? Would the police have kept it so quiet? Or was this something else? I looked at Mina. She was pale, holding her phone. Useless. I will walk, I said. My voice sounded foreign to my own ears. Marjorie nodded once. Good. Fix your face. You look frantic. She turned and left the room. I walked to the mirror. I looked frantic. My eyes were wide, the pupils dilated. I took a deep breath, smoothing the silk over my hips. I felt like I was dissociating. I was watching a movie of a woman getting married while her life burned down in the background. Let's go, I said to Mina. We walked out to the entrance of the conservatory. The music had changed. The string quartet was playing the procession piece. The doors opened. The sight hit me like a physical blow. The symmetry of the room was destroyed. On the right, a wall of people. On the left, a wasteland of empty white chairs. I stepped forward. A ripple of whispers went through the room. I saw people leaning in, pointing. I saw a phone raised, the camera lens black and unblinking. They weren't looking at my dress. They were looking at the void where my family should have been. I kept my eyes on the altar. Graham was standing there. He looked handsome. He looked perfect. He watched me walk toward him. He didn't look at the empty seats. He looked only at me. And for a split second, his expression slipped. It wasn't love. It wasn't sympathy for the woman walking alone toward him while her family was missing. It was calculation. His eyes narrowed. Just a fraction. He was assessing me. He was measuring how I was handling the pressure. He was checking to see if I would break. I felt a crack open up inside me, a cold, sharp fracture of distrust. I had thought I was walking toward my future, but looking at Graham's flat, appraising eyes, and feeling the weight of the empty chairs at my back, I realized I might be walking into a trap. I took the next step, then the next. I walked alone. The champagne flute in my hand was trembling, sending tiny ripples across the surface of the pale gold liquid. I stared at it, focusing on the vibration, because looking at anything else in the Cedar and Crane Conservatory was too humiliating to bear. The ceremony had been a blur of mumbled vows and the distinct, suffocating sound of 200 people trying not to look at 70 empty chairs. We had done it. We were married. But as we stood in the reception hall, surrounded by the murmur of Graham's family and colleagues, I felt less like a bride and more like a hostage in a very expensive silk dress. Graham was holding court near the bar, his hand resting possessively on the small of my back. Every time I tried to step away, his fingers tightened just enough to stop me. It was subtle, a pressure that could pass for affection, but to me, it felt like a leash. I need to go, I whispered to him, leaning in close so the wife of his senior partner wouldn't hear. Graham, I cannot stay here drinking champagne. My parents could be in a hospital. Graham turned his head, keeping his smile fixed for the room. Bella, be rational, he said, his voice low and smooth. We have called the hospitals. There is no record of them yet. If you leave now, you are just going to be driving aimlessly around Harrow Glen in a wedding dress. You will look hysterical. I don't care how I look, I hissed. I care, he said. The words were flat, hard. He took a sip of his drink, his eyes scanning the room, acknowledging a toast from across the floor with a nod. We wait for official confirmation, he said. That is the only smart move. The police know we are looking. The moment they have a name, they will call. Until then, you are going to stay here, smile at my mother's friends, and act like the woman I just married. He turned back to his partner's wife, seamlessly picking up a conversation about interest rates. I stood there, frozen. It was the logic that trapped me. He was right. Driving around aimlessly would solve nothing. But the passivity he was demanding felt wrong. It felt physically painful, like holding my breath underwater. I realized then that Graham was not worried about my family. He was worried about the disruption. He was managing the situation the way he managed a client crisis. Contain the damage. Control the narrative. Wait for data. I excused myself, my legs feeling heavy, and walked toward the terrace doors. I needed air. The conservatory was stifling, the smell of expensive lilies now making my stomach turn. Mina intercepted me before I reached the exit. She looked rattled. Her bridesmaid dress was slightly rumpled, and she was holding her phone like a weapon. Come here, she said, grabbing my elbow and steering me into a quiet alcove behind a wall of potted ferns. Did you find anything? I asked, my heart jumping. Did Evan answer? No, she said, still nothing. But Bella, I saw something. She looked over her shoulder, checking the room. The guests were mingling, oblivious. What? I asked. Your mother-in-law, Mina said. Marjorie. I saw her outside just before the ceremony started. She was talking to a man in the parking lot. So? She knows everyone in this town. Not this guy, Mina said. She was standing by a black sedan. The guy was wearing a gray suit. Sharkskin. Really expensive cut. I recognized him. Bella. I saw him 2 weeks ago when I met you for lunch near Graham's office. He was coming out of the elevators at Holt and Brackenridge. I frowned. Graham works with 100 people. Mina. No. You don't understand. Mina lowered her voice to a whisper. I never posted the location of the wedding online. You didn't either. The invite list was locked down. Graham's firm wasn't invited, except for the partners. This guy wasn't a partner. He looked like, I don't know, like a cleaner. Someone who handles mess. You are being paranoid, I said, though a cold shiver went down my spine. Why would someone from Graham's firm be talking to Marjorie in the parking lot? That is exactly my point, Mina said. They looked thick as thieves, and when I walked out, they stopped talking immediately. Marjorie looked at me like I was a bug she wanted to squash. I looked across the room at Marjorie. She was standing by the buffet, laughing lightly at something a judge was saying. She looked perfectly at ease. I need to check my bank, I said suddenly. What? My bank? I repeated. The courier? The notice? If my accounts are frozen, I need to know why. It might be connected. If my dad did something, if he moved money. I pulled my phone out of the hidden pocket in my dress. I opened the North Spire Credit Union app. My hands were shaking so bad I mistyped my password twice. System error. Please try again. I took a deep breath and typed it slowly. Identity verification required. I stared at the screen. I had logged in yesterday without issue. We do not recognize this device. The screen read, please answer your security questions to proceed. Fine. I tapped continue. Question 1. What was the name of your first pet? I typed Buster. Incorrect answer. I stared at it. Buster was the golden retriever we had when I was 7. It was definitely Buster. I tried it again. Incorrect answer. Maybe I used the cat? Whiskers? Incorrect answer. Account locked. Please contact customer service. I felt the blood drain from my face. Mina. I said, Someone changed my security questions. What do you mean? I mean, I cannot get in. It says my answers are wrong. I closed the app and opened my email. Searching for alerts from North Spire. I scrolled past the wedding RSVPs and the spam. There, buried in the promotions folder from 3 days ago. Security alert. Profile updated. I opened it. Dear customer, your primary address and security preferences were successfully updated on January 29th. If you did not make this change, please contact us immediately. I clicked the link to view the profile details. It asked for a password again. But the preview text in the email body showed the new address, 114 Briarhook Road, Suite B, Sable Ridge Mail Center. Sable Ridge? I said aloud. That is a strip mall on the edge of town. It is 20 miles from where I live. Bella, Mina said, her voice trembling. Who would change your address to a strip mall mailbox? I looked up at her. The realization hit me hard. Someone who wanted to make sure I didn't get my mail. I said, someone who wanted to intercept the bank notices before I saw them. I looked back at Graham. He was still smiling, still chatting. I have to go to the police station. I said, Bella. Graham said we should wait. Screw Graham. I said, my family is missing, my bank account is hijacked, and my mother-in-law is having secret meetings in the parking lot. I am done waiting. I didn't tell Graham I was leaving. I knew he would stop me. I knew he would use his calm, lawyerly logic to make me feel small and irrational. So I just turned and walked out the side door, past the catering vans, and into the humid afternoon air. My car was still at the hotel. I called a rideshare. When the driver pulled up, a confused teenager in a beat-up Honda, he looked at my wedding dress with wide eyes. Rough day? He asked. You have no idea. I said, take me to the police precinct on 4th Street. The drive took 10 minutes. I sat in the back, gathering the silk skirt of my gown into a bundle on my lap so it wouldn't brush the dirty floor mats. I felt ridiculous. I felt like a punchline. But underneath the shame was a growing, burning anger. The precinct was quiet. It was a Saturday. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead. I walked up to the front desk, the train of my dress dragging on the linoleum. The desk sergeant, a heavy-set man with tired eyes, looked up. He didn't even blink at the dress. In Harrow Glen, on a Saturday night, he had probably seen worse. I need information on the accident on Briarhook Parkway. I said, my name is Bella Perez. I believe my family was involved. He typed something into his computer. We cannot release names yet. Ma'am, he said, next of kin notifications are still pending for some parties. Are there fatalities? I asked, my voice cracking. He hesitated. Then he looked at me, really looked at me, and his expression softened. There were injuries, he said, serious ones, but the scene is complicated. Complicated how? It wasn't just a collision, he said. It involved a private transport van, armored. There was a spill? A spill? Like chemicals? Paper, he said. I stared at him. Paper? Financial documents. He said, boxes of them. They were scattered all over the road. That is why the road is still closed. They have a recovery team out there trying to gather evidence. It is a mess. Financial documents. My father worked at Briarwick Title and Registry. He dealt in deeds, transfers, large sums of money moving between hands. If he was moving documents on a Saturday, documents that needed an armored transport, was the van? I started, then stopped. Was the van associated with a title company? The officer's eyes narrowed. I cannot say. He said, but if you are family, you should go home and wait for a call. The detectives are sorting through a lot of red tape right now. He wasn't going to tell me anything else, but he had told me enough. This wasn't just a car crash. This was a breach. I thanked him and walked out. I didn't go back to the venue. I couldn't face the music and the lies. I took another car back to the Larkspur Hotel. The lobby was empty. I took the elevator up to the bridal suite. My head pounding. I just wanted to get out of the dress. I wanted to scrub the makeup off my face and think. When I opened the door to the suite, I stopped. The room had been cleaned. The bed was made. The towels were replaced. And the pile of wedding gifts, the envelopes and small boxes guests had dropped off earlier in the morning before heading to the venue, had been moved. They were stacked neatly on the dresser, organized by size. I walked over to them. I hadn't asked housekeeping to come in. I had the "Do Not Disturb" sign on the door. I scanned the pile. The card box was there. The gift from Mina was there. But there was a small, velvet box missing. My grandmother's locket. I had left it on the nightstand. I had taken it off right before I put on my dress, because the clasp was finicky, and I didn't want it to snag the lace. I had planned to put it back on for the photos. I frantically checked the nightstand. Empty. I checked the drawers. Empty. I checked the bathroom counter. Nothing. Panic. Sharp and cold. Spiked in my chest. That locket was the only thing I had of hers. It was solid gold. Vintage. Irreplaceable. The door behind me beeped and opened. Graham walked in. He looked tired. He had loosened his tie, and his jacket was slung over his arm. When he saw me, he let out a long sigh. "There you are," he said. "Do you have any idea how embarrassing it was to explain where the bride went? My mother had to tell people you had a migraine." "Where is my locket?" I asked. Graham blinked. "What? My grandmother's locket?" I said, "I left it on the nightstand. The room has been cleaned. The gifts have been moved. It is gone." He walked over to the minibar and opened a bottle of water. "Bella, calm down. The staff probably just tidied up. We can call the front desk in the morning." "I am not calling in the morning," I yelled. "I am calling now. Someone was in here." He took a long drink of water. Watching me. "You are hysterical," he said calmly. "You are upset about your family, and you are projecting it onto a piece of jewelry. It is probably in your bag." "It is not in my bag." I dumped my clutch onto the bed. Lipstick, phone, tissues. "No locket." Graham set the water down. "Look," he said, "if it is lost, I will buy you another one." "You cannot buy another one." I said, "It was hers. It had an engraving." "I know," he said, "to my brave girl." I stopped. The room went dead silent. I stared at him. The air conditioner hummed in the background. "What did you say?" I whispered. He looked at me, his face impassive. "To my brave girl." "That is what it said on the back. I never told you that." I said. My heart was hammering against my ribs. I had never told him. I had never shown him the back of the locket. I rarely took it off. And when I did, I put it away. It was my secret. My grandmother had given it to me the day I left for college. The day my father told me I would fail. She had whispered the words to me, and I had never repeated them to a soul. Graham's eyes flickered. Just for a second, a tiny rupture in his composure. "You must have mentioned it," he said, shrugging. "Maybe when we were dating. Or maybe I saw it when you were sleeping." "You did not see it when I was sleeping," I said, backing away from him. "It faces inward, against the skin. You would have to unclasp it and turn it over." He stepped toward me. "Bella, you are tired. You are imagining things." "Did you take it?" I asked. "Don't be ridiculous. Where is it?" "Graham?" He sighed, running a hand through his hair. "I think the staff put it in the safe." He said, "I think I saw them doing it when I came up to drop off my bag earlier." "You came up here earlier?" I asked. "When?" "While you were at the police station. I assume, since you vanished?" He walked over to the room safe in the closet. He punched in a code, 4 digits I didn't know, and the door beeped open. He reached in and pulled out the velvet box. "Here," he said, tossing it onto the bed. "Safe and sound." I told them to secure the valuables. I looked at the box. He had known the code. He had known it was there. And he had lied about it 5 seconds ago, saying the staff misplaced it, offering to buy me a new one. "Why did you lie?" I asked. "I didn't lie." He said, "I just didn't want you to worry until I checked." He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Go change, Bella. You look like a ghost." I grabbed the box and retreated into the bathroom. I locked the door. My hands were shaking so hard I could barely open the velvet lid. The locket was there. I clutched it to my chest, breathing hard. He knew the engraving. He had held it. He had looked at it. He wasn't just managing the wedding. He was managing me. I changed into jeans and a sweater, stuffing the dress into the garment bag. I couldn't look at it. I waited until I heard the TV turn on in the other room. Then I slipped out. I am going to the pharmacy. I called out through the door. I need aspirin. Graham didn't answer. I didn't go to the pharmacy. I went to the one place that might have answers. North Spire Credit Union had a branch downtown that stayed open until 4 on Saturdays. I got there at 3:45. I marched up to the glass doors, just as the security guard was starting to lock up. "Please," I said, pressing my hand against the glass. "I have a fraud emergency. My identity has been stolen." He looked at my desperate face, then at the clock, and unlocked the door. I sat in a small cubicle with a woman named Sarah. She was young, with kind eyes and a fraud specialist badge on her lanyard. I verified my identity with my driver's license and my social security number, overriding the security questions that had been changed. Sarah typed furiously on her keyboard, her expression growing more serious by the minute. "Ms. Perez," she said, "I see the address change. We can revert that immediately. But are you aware of the other activity on your profile?" "What activity?" "There is a line of credit," she said, "a home equity line of credit. It was opened 4 months ago." I stared at her. "I don't have a home equity line. I have a mortgage on my condo in Merrow Heights. That is it." She turned the monitor so I could see. "Here," she said, pointing to a row of numbers. "A generic line of credit was opened against the equity of your property. $50,000. It was fully drawn down 2 weeks ago." $50,000? I felt sick. Who authorized this? She clicked a digital file. It shows a notarized signature, Isabella Perez, and a witness signature. She zoomed in. I leaned forward. The signature looked like mine. A good forgery. But the witness signature, it was a scrawl. Barely legible, but I knew the loop of the L. Luke, my brother. My stomach dropped. Luke had signed it. Luke, who I had bailed out of trouble a dozen times. Luke, who couldn't keep a secret to save his life. "Ms. Perez," Sarah said gently, "this loan is currently in default. The first payment was missed last week." "Default?" I whispered. "If it stays in default, the bank will move to foreclosure proceedings on the collateral. My condo." I said, "Yes. They put my home up as collateral for a $50,000 loan I never saw?" "It appears so," Sarah said. "And since it was notarized, fighting this is going to be difficult. You will need to file a police report for identity theft. You will need to sue the signatories." "Sue my brother?" I asked. "If you want to save your home." "Yes." I sat back in the chair. The room spun. This was why my account was restricted. This was why the address was changed, to hide the default notices. It wasn't just my father. It was Luke. It was the whole family. They had cannibalized my life to fund what? What needed $50,000 in cash 2 weeks before my wedding? I walked out of the bank into the late afternoon sun. The light was harsh, unforgiving. I felt exposed. My independence, my condo, my credit, my good name, wasn't just in danger, it was already sold. I sat on a bench outside the bank and pulled out my phone. I needed to talk to someone who knew my father better than I did, someone who understood the way his mind worked. I dialed Pastor Reed Halston. He had been the family pastor for 30 years. He had baptized me. He had counseled my parents through their rough patches. If anyone knew the secrets of the Perez house, it was him. The phone rang 4 times. "Hello?" His voice was guarded. "Pastor Reed, it is Bella." I said. Silence on the other end. "Bella," he said finally. I heard about the wedding. I am so sorry I couldn't be there. Where are they?" "Pastor?" I asked. "I know you know." "Bella, please," he said. His voice sounded tight, strained, like he was looking over his shoulder. "My identity was used to take out a loan. Pastor, my brother signed it. My father is missing. There was an accident with a van full of documents. What is going on? You need to listen to me," he said. "And you need to listen carefully because I cannot say this twice. I am listening. Your father, he loves you. Bella. In his own way. That is not an answer. It is the only answer, he said. Everything he has done, everything he is doing right now, he believes he is protecting the family. From what? I demanded. Protecting us from what? From the debt, Reed said. From the people who collect it. Who? Who are the people? Silence again. Then, a whisper. You should not have married him. Bella. What? The groom. You should not have married him. Why? Because oil and water don't mix. But fire and gasoline do. Stay safe. Child. Click. He hung up. I stared at the phone. Fire and gasoline. I walked back to the hotel in a daze. The sun was setting, casting long, bruised shadows across the city. I went up to the room. Graham was gone. He had left a note on the dresser. Meeting the partners for drinks. Don't wait up. Get some rest. I went into the bathroom. I turned on the bright vanity lights. I looked at myself in the mirror. I was still wearing the wedding makeup. The waterproof mascara held on, but the foundation was cracking around my mouth. My eyes looked hollow. I picked up a washcloth and ran it under hot water. I scrubbed my face. I scrubbed hard. I wanted to take the skin off. My father had stolen from me. My brother had betrayed me. My husband was spying on me and lying about it. My mother-in-law was meeting with cleaners in parking lots. I looked at the woman in the mirror. Her face was red, raw, clean. The humiliation of the empty chairs was gone. That was just a surface wound. The real wound was deeper. It was the realization that for my entire life, I had thought I was a player in my own story. But I wasn't. I was a prop. I was an asset to be leveraged, a signature to be forged, a problem to be managed. My life was being rearranged without my consent. I gripped the edge of the sink, my knuckles turning white. No, I whispered to the empty room. They thought I was the responsible one, the quiet one, the one who kept the peace. They were about to find out exactly how loud I could get. The morning after my wedding felt less like a hangover and more like the aftermath of a natural disaster. The sky over Harrow Glen was a bruised purple, heavy with rain that hadn't fallen yet, and the air was thick with humidity. I hadn't slept. I had sat in the chair by the window in the hotel room, watching Graham sleep, wondering if the man breathing deeply in the king-sized bed was my husband or my handler. I left before he woke up. I didn't leave a note. My first stop was Sable Ridge Mail Center. It was located in a strip mall on the desolate edge of town, sandwiched between a discount vape shop and a laundromat that smelled of wet wool and chemicals. The sign above the door was cracked, the plastic yellowed by years of sun. It was the kind of place people used when they didn't want to be found. I pushed open the glass door. A bell chimed, a tinny, cheerful sound that clashed with the gloom inside. The air conditioner was rattling violently, fighting a losing battle against the heat. Behind the high counter sat a clerk, a man in his early 20s with headphones around his neck and a look of profound boredom. "Help you?" he asked, not looking up from his phone. "I need to inquire about a box," I said, keeping my voice steady. "Box 412. He looked up then. His eyes flicked over my clothes, jeans and a sweatshirt, but the diamond on my finger caught the fluorescent light. "You the renter?" he asked. "I am, Isabella Perez." I pulled out my driver's license and slid it across the scratched laminate counter. He picked it up, compared the photo to my face, and shrugged. "System says box 412 is active," he said, "rented last Wednesday." "Who rented it?" I asked. He tapped a few keys on his computer. "Says here D. Perez. Authorized user is Isabella Perez. D. Perez." The air left my lungs. My father's name was Martin. My brothers were Evan and Luke. There was only one D. Diane, my mother, who had cried when I picked out my dress. My mother, who had claimed she wanted nothing more than my happiness. She hadn't just been complicit in the silence. She had been the architect of the logistics. "Has anyone picked up mail from it?" I asked. The clerk grabbed a physical logbook from under the counter. He flipped a few pages, licking his finger. "Yeah," he said. "Yesterday morning, around 9. Right when we opened. Can you describe the person?" He squinted at the ceiling, trying to recall. Older woman, he said. Kept her head down, big sunglasses, baseball cap. Looked like she was trying to be invisible. You know? Signed for a certified letter. Did she say anything? Just asked if the bank stuff had come in yet. He said. I gripped the edge of the counter. The bank stuff. The foreclosure notices. The default letters. They had routed everything here so I would remain blind until the sheriff showed up at my door. Thank you, I said. I turned and walked out. The parking lot was empty, silent except for the distant hum of the highway. I sat in my car, gripping the steering wheel until my knuckles turned white. It was one thing to be abandoned. It was another to be systematically dismantled by the woman who had taught you how to tie your shoes. I started the engine and drove. I didn't go back to the hotel. I drove west, toward Briarwick. My parents' neighborhood was a labyrinth of manicured lawns and identical colonial houses. A place where appearances were the only currency that mattered. I turned onto their street. It was quiet. Sunday morning quiet. I pulled into the driveway of number 64. The house looked exactly as it always did. The hedges were trimmed. The blinds were drawn. It looked peaceful. But when I got out of the car, the silence felt wrong. It wasn't the silence of sleep. It was the silence of a vacuum. I walked up the front path. I didn't ring the doorbell. I still had my key. A brass copy on a keychain shaped like a cat that I had kept since high school. I slid it into the lock. It turned. I pushed the door open and stepped inside. Hello? I called out. My voice echoed. The house was empty. Not just empty of people, empty of life. The furniture was there, but the personal touches were gone. The framed photos on the hallway table, gone. The stack of mail that always sat on the credenza, gone. The coats that usually cluttered the rack, gone. I walked into the living room. It smelled of lemon pledge and stale air. The shelves where my father kept his collection of vintage history books were bare. The mantel, usually crowded with family portraits, was wiped clean. They hadn't just left for the weekend. They had purged the house. I walked into the kitchen. The counters were gleaming. The refrigerator was empty except for a box of baking soda and a single, withered lemon. It was as if they had erased themselves. I stood in the center of the kitchen, feeling a rising tide of panic. Where did they go? You don't just disappear. You don't just pack up 30 years of life in 24 hours unless you are running from something massive. I went to the trash compactor. It was empty. I checked the recycling bin under the sink. There, at the bottom, was a single, crumpled ball of paper. I reached in and pulled it out. My hands were trembling as I smoothed it flat on the granite island. It was a shred of a document. Most of it was torn away, but the top right corner remained intact. It was heavy, cream-colored bond paper, the kind lawyers used. I stared at the partial letterhead. Holt and Brackenridge Partners. Graham's firm. My heart hammered against my ribs. I looked at the text below the logo. It was cut off, but I could make out 3 words typed in bold. Settlement agreement and what? I turned the paper over. On the back, handwritten in blue ink, were numbers, 400,000, then a line, minus legal fees, then a final number, 320. I stared at the numbers, $320,000. I stuffed the paper into my pocket. My hands felt cold. Graham had sworn to me, looking me dead in the eye, that his firm had no connection to my father. He had dismissed my fears as paranoia, but here was his firm's name in my father's trash, attached to a 6-figure sum. I ran out of the house. I couldn't breathe in there. The air felt toxic, recycled from a life that had been a lie. I got back into my car and locked the doors. I needed a second opinion. I needed someone who wasn't part of the gaslight. I called Mina. She answered on the first ring. Bella? Where are you? Graham is texting me asking if I have seen you. I am at my parents' house. I said, it is empty. Mina. They cleared it out. And I found a paper with Graham's firm's name on it. Oh my God, Mina said. Her voice was tinny through the speaker. Bella, you need to leave there. If they cleared the house, they might be watching it. I am leaving. I said, reversing out of the driveway. But Mina, I went to the mail center. My mother rented the box. My mother, listen to me, Mina said. Her voice was sharp, cutting through my panic. You need to check your credit report. Right now. I tried the bank app. I can't get in. Not the bank app, Mina said. The bureaus. Go to the federal site. Get the full report. If they are moving money, it will show up there. I will do it when I get somewhere safe. I said. I drove to a coffee shop 3 towns over, a place where nobody knew the name Perez or Holt. I sat in the back corner, connected to the Wi-Fi, and pulled up the credit bureau site. I typed in my social security number. I answered the verification questions, the ones they couldn't change because they were based on public records. The report generated a spinning wheel of doom. Then it popped up. I scrolled past the student loans I had paid off. I scrolled past my car lease, and then I stopped. Under the section labeled Recent Inquiries, there were 12 hits in the last 30 days. Banks I had never heard of, lenders who specialized in high-risk personal loans, and under business affiliations, Principal Officer, Isabella Perez. Entity name, Peregrine Consulting, LLC. Registration date, November 12th. Peregrine Consulting. I stared at the name, Peregrine, like the falcon, or Pear, for Perez, Grin, for Graham? No, that was too simple. But the LLC was real. It was registered to my social security number, and it had an address listed, 114 Briarhook Road, Suite B, the mailbox at Sable Ridge. I clicked on the details. The business was classified as management consulting. It had taken out a small business loan of $75,000 from a regional lender 2 weeks ago. The status of the loan was disbursed. They hadn't just stolen my identity to hide debt. They had used my identity to build a shell company, borrow money against it, and cash out. I felt bile rise in my throat. I was the bag holder. I was the fall guy. My phone buzzed on the table. I looked at it. Unknown number. I usually didn't answer unknown numbers, but today, every rule was broken. I picked it up. Hello? Bella? The voice was a whisper, high-pitched, terrified. Luke? I said. Luke, is that you? I pressed the phone to my ear, straining to hear him over the noise of the coffee grinder. Luke, where are you? Why weren't you at the wedding? Dad said don't talk, Luke whispered. He sounded like he was crying. He said if I talked to you, I would ruin everything. Ruin what? I demanded. Luke, listen to me. They are using my name. They opened a company. Did you sign for that too? I didn't know what it was, he stammered. He told me it was just for the trust. He said it was to protect your assets from the marriage. Luke, tell me where you are. I can't. Luke, please. I am scared. Silence, then a rustle of movement on his end. He is coming back. Luke hissed, Bella, just don't fight him, please. Just let him do it. It is better if you just let him do it. Let him do what? The line went dead. I stared at the phone. Don't fight him. My brother, who I had tutored in math, who I had defended from bullies, was now begging me to submit to my own destruction because he was too weak to stand up to our father. I slammed the laptop shut. I wasn't going to submit. I drove back to Harrow Glen. The anger was no longer hot. It was cold. It was a glacier moving through my chest, crushing everything in its path. Love, loyalty, doubt. I went straight to the hotel. Graham was in the room, packing his suitcase. He looked up when I entered, his face a mask of concern. Bella, thank God, he said, moving to hug me. I was about to call the police. Where have you been? I stepped back, avoiding his touch. I went for a drive. I said. He stopped, his arms dropping to his sides. He studied my face. You look intense, he said. I found something. Graham, what did you find? I reached into my pocket and pulled out the scrap of paper. I held it up. I found this in my parents' trash can. I said, it is a settlement agreement from Holt and Brackenridge. Graham looked at the paper. His expression didn't change. He didn't flinch. He just looked at it with mild curiosity. Okay, he said. It has your firm's name on it. Graham, and it has numbers on the back. $320,000. Bella, My firm handles thousands of cases a year. You told me you never represented my father. I don't, he said comfortably. We don't. Then why is this in his trash? He sighed. The sound of a parent explaining quantum physics to a toddler. Bella, it is entirely possible that your father was on the other side of a deal we handled. Or maybe he consulted with one of our estate planners years ago. People keep old paperwork. This isn't old, I said. The paper is fresh. The ink is blue and bright. He stepped closer, his voice dropping to that soothing, hypnotic register he used on juries. Sweetheart, you are looking for a villain. I get it. Your family abandoned you. It is traumatic, but you are trying to tie me to them to make sense of the pain. I am not the enemy here. I am your husband. I looked at him. He was perfect. His tie was straight. His eyes were sincere, but it was too polished. It was too smooth. A normal husband would be confused. He would be grabbing the paper, asking questions, looking at the numbers. Graham wasn't asking questions because he already knew the answers. I don't believe you, I said. Graham's face hardened. The mask slipped. Just an inch. Believe what you want. Bella, he said coolly. But if you keep digging for a conspiracy that doesn't exist, you are going to exhaust yourself. We have a honeymoon to catch tomorrow. I suggest you focus on that. I am not going on a honeymoon. I said. He laughed. A short, dry sound. Yes, you are. Because if you stay here, you are just going to spin out. He turned back to his suitcase. I didn't argue. I didn't scream. I just walked into the bathroom, grabbed my toothbrush, and walked out. I am staying at the condo tonight. I said. Graham paused. Fine, he said, not looking back. Take some space. I will see you in the morning. I left the hotel. I didn't go to the condo. I waited in my car until Monday morning. I slept in the back seat of the Honda, parked in the shadowed corner of a 24-hour grocery store lot, waking up every hour to the sound of delivery trucks. At 8 a.m., I walked into the Harrow Glen County Courthouse. I went to the records clerk. The room smelled of old paper and bureaucratic indifference. I need to search for civil filings. I told the clerk. A woman with reading glasses on a chain. Under the name Perez, Martin or Isabella. She pointed to a computer terminal. Public records are searchable there. I sat down. I typed in my name. Dozens of results came up. Traffic tickets from college, my condo deed, and then, at the top of the list, a filing from 2 weeks ago. Case number, CV 20260049. In the matter of the guardianship and conservatorship of Isabella Maria Perez, petitioner, Martin Perez, status, sealed pending hearing. I felt the blood drain from my head. The room tilted. Conservatorship, that was what you did for people with dementia, for people in comas, for people who couldn't tie their own shoes. I walked back to the counter. My legs felt like lead. Excuse me, I said. This case, it says sealed. Can I see the petition? She looked at the screen. Are you a party to the case? I am the respondent. I said, I am Isabella Perez. She looked at me, then typed something. Since you are the subject, you can view the initial filing, but the medical exhibits are sealed. She printed out a sheaf of papers and handed them to me. I took them to a bench in the hallway. My hands were shaking so hard I could barely turn the pages. Petition for emergency temporary conservatorship. Reason for filing. The proposed ward, Isabella Perez, has demonstrated a rapid and severe decline in mental stability, resulting in reckless financial decisions, susceptibility to undue influence, and an inability to manage her own affairs. Evidence: 1. Recent erratic spending and liquidation of assets. 2. Alienation of family support systems. 3. Confidential incident report, dated January 10th. 4. Witness statement from staff at Cedar and Crane Conservatory regarding unstable behavior. I read the line again. Witness statement from staff at Cedar and Crane. That was the wedding venue. The filing was dated 2 weeks ago. They had planted a witness before the wedding even happened. They knew I would react to the empty seats. They knew I would look unstable. They had engineered the humiliation not just to hurt me, but to create evidence. I stood up. I felt sick. I felt like I was standing in the center of a spider web that had been spun around me for months while I was busy picking out flower arrangements. I needed a lawyer, not a corporate shark like Graham. I needed a fighter. I searched on my phone. Legal aid. Harrow Glen. One name came up with 5 stars and a reputation for being difficult. Sloan Legal Aid and Advocacy. I drove there. It was a small office above a bakery, cluttered with files and smelling of yeast and coffee. Kara Sloan was a woman in her 40s with sharp features and hair pulled back in a severe bun. She listened to me for 20 minutes without interrupting. She looked at the trash scrap. She looked at the credit report I had printed. She looked at the court filing. Then she leaned back in her chair and took off her glasses. "You are in trouble, Bella," she said. "I know." I said, "Can we stop it?" Kara tapped a pen on her desk. "Conservatorships are hard to get," she said. "The standard of proof is clear and convincing evidence. But your father isn't playing to win on the merits. He is playing the clock." "What do you mean?" "He filed for an emergency temporary order," she explained. "If the judge grants that, and judges often do when family concern is cited, he gets control of your assets immediately, before a full trial, before you can testify, and then he controls your bank accounts. He controls your legal decisions. He can fire me and hire a lawyer of his choosing to represent you. He can settle lawsuits on your behalf." "Settle lawsuits?" I asked. "Like the default on the loan?" "Exactly," she said. "If he is conservator, he can admit to the debt in your name. He can liquidate your condo to pay it off. He can clean up the paper trail of the fraud he committed, and he can do it all legally, with a court stamp." I sat there, stunned. It was brilliant. It was evil. "So what do we do?" I asked. "We fight," Kara said. "But we have to move fast. We need to file an objection today, and we need to lock down your assets so he can't touch them even if he gets the temporary order." She pulled a legal pad toward her. "I need you to log into every bank account you have," she said. "Change the passwords. Change the security questions to something nobody knows. Not your mother, not your brother, not your husband." I tried. I said, "I tried yesterday. I couldn't get in." "Try again." Kara said, "Call them. Go in person. Do whatever you have to do. Because if he gets that order, and he has the passwords, you are a ghost in your own life." I left her office with a list of instructions. I felt a surge of adrenaline. I had a plan. I wasn't just a victim anymore. I went to the library to use a public terminal. Afraid my phone was compromised, I navigated to North Spire's site. I clicked Forgot Password. "Please answer your security questions." I looked at them. Question 1. What is the name of your favorite childhood teacher? I typed, Mrs. Higgins. Incorrect. I stared at the screen. That was the answer. I knew it was. I tried. Mrs. Gable. Incorrect. I sat back. They hadn't just changed the questions. They had answered them with information I didn't know, or they had answered them with lies only they agreed on. I tried the next one. Question 2. What was the make of your first car? I typed, Toyota. Incorrect. I typed, Honda. Incorrect. I felt a cold sweat breaking out on my forehead. These were the questions that were supposed to prove I was me, and I couldn't answer them. I was locked out. I tried my email, locked out. I tried my retirement account, locked out. I sat in the library, surrounded by students studying for exams, and realized the walls were closing in. They had been planning this for months. Every time I visited home, every time I mentioned a password, every time I left my phone on the table at Sunday dinner, they had been gathering keys. I left the library. I walked to my car. I drove to my condo in Merrow Heights. It was the one place that felt safe. I had bought it 3 years ago. I had painted the walls a soft sage green. I had hung the curtains. It was mine. I unlocked the front door and stepped inside. The air was still. The sun was setting, casting long shadows across the hardwood floor. I stood in the center of the living room. I looked at the walls I had painted myself. I thought about my father. I thought about the way he used to look at me when I got straight A's. "That's my girl," he would say. "Smart, responsible. He hadn't been praising me. He had been grooming me. He didn't want a daughter. He wanted a vessel. He wanted an identity he could wear when his own credit ran dry. I looked at the mail on the floor. There was a letter from the HOA. Notice of lien. I picked it up. Unpaid assessments. Pre-foreclosure warning. They had stopped paying my bills. They were letting my life rot from the inside out, so that when they walked into court, they could point to the decay and say, "Look, she can't handle it." I crumpled the letter in my fist. Kara had said the goal was to delay, to bury the paper trails. But she was wrong about one thing. My father wasn't just trying to teach me a lesson. He wasn't just trying to steal money. I looked around my quiet, empty home, the sanctuary I had built with my own hands. He was trying to take my adulthood away. He was trying to legally regress me into a child, a dependent, a non-person who needed his permission to breathe. I walked to the window and looked out at the city lights. "You want a child?" I whispered to the glass. I closed my eyes, feeling the rage settle into a hard, cold knot in my stomach. "You are going to wish you had left me alone." The fluorescent lights of the Harrow Glen County Clerk's office hummed with a sound that drilled straight into the base of my skull. It was Monday morning. The air smelled of burnt coffee and photocopier ozone. Kara Sloan stood next to me at the plexiglass window, her posture rigid, sliding a stack of documents under the slot. "We are filing an emergency objection to the temporary conservatorship," Kara told the clerk, a woman with gray roots showing in her tight bun, and a motion to stay all asset freezing until a hearing can be set. The clerk picked up the papers. She moved with the slow, deliberate speed of someone who was paid by the hour and resented every minute of it. She stamped the top page, "Received," with a heavy thud that made me flinch. She typed something into her terminal. Her eyes narrowed behind her reading glasses. "Case CV 20260049, she read aloud. "Assigned to Judge Alton Vare." Kara stiffened. I saw her hand tighten around her leather portfolio. "Judge Vare?" Kara asked. "Are you sure?" The rotation schedule said Judge Miller was sitting on family court this week. The clerk shrugged, not looking up. "Judge Vare took the emergency docket this morning. Miller is out sick." Kara swore under her breath. It was soft, but I heard it. "What?" I whispered. "Who is Judge Vare?" Kara took my arm and led me away from the window, toward a wooden bench that looked like it had been waiting there since the 1950s. "Vare is old school," Kara said, her voice low. "He is the kind of judge who thinks a father's authority is absolute. He uses the phrase family stability a lot. In his courtroom, family stability usually means keeping the boat steady, even if the person rowing it is drowning." My stomach turned. "So he will grant it?" I asked. "He likes quick resolutions," Kara said, "and he hates what he calls hysterical women. We have to be bulletproof. Bella, if we go in there emotional, he will hand your father the keys to your life before lunch." I looked at the stamped papers in her hand. They felt flimsy. A few sheets of paper against a lifetime of manipulation. "We need more than an objection," Kara said, tapping the folder. "We need to know why they are moving so fast. A conservatorship is a nuclear option. You don't drop a nuke unless you are trying to hide a massive conventional war. I need to talk to my mother." I said. Kara looked at me skeptically. "She is the one who rented the mailbox. Bella. She is an adverse party. She is also the weak link." I said, "My father is iron. My mother, she cracks. If I can get her on the phone, if I can just hear her voice, I might be able to get something out of her." Kara checked her watch. "You have 20 minutes while I file the service copies, but do not, I repeat, do not, admit to knowing about the fraud yet. If they know we are on to the identity theft, they will shred everything." I walked outside to the courthouse steps. The morning air was cool, but I was sweating. I pulled out my phone. I had called my mother 50 times in the last 48 hours. Every time, it had gone to voicemail. I dialed the number again. It rang. 1, 2, 3. I expected the click, the robotic voice. "Hello?" The voice was breathless, tiny. "Mom?" I said. I gripped the phone so hard my fingers hurt. "Mom, it is Bella." There was a silence on the other end. I could hear breathing, shallow, jagged breaths. "Bella," she whispered. "You shouldn't be calling. Where are you?" I asked. "I went to the house. It is empty." "Mom, tell me where you are." "We are safe," she said. But the word sounded like a question. "We are at the lake cabin." The cabin. My uncle's place in Northwood. It was 2 hours away, isolated, deep in the woods. "Mom, why did you miss the wedding?" I asked. I kept my voice steady, fighting the urge to scream. "Why is my bank account frozen?" "You know why," she whispered. Her voice was trembling. "You made your choice, Bella. You chose him over us." "I chose a husband," I said. "That is what people do. They grow up and get married." "It is not about marriage," she hissed. "It is about survival. You don't understand what is happening. Then tell me. Tell me so I can understand." She made a sound like a sob, quickly stifled. "I can't come home yet," she said, her voice dropping so low I had to press the phone against my ear. "Your father, he has people watching the house. He says it isn't safe." "Watching the house? Who?" "The people from the office," she said. "The men in the vans. They are angry. Bella, they are looking for the files." "What files?" "The ones in the accident," she said. "The ones that got scattered. He says if they find out it was his fault." Suddenly, her tone changed. It snapped from fearful intimacy to a loud, performative exhaustion. "Bella, please stop," she shouted into the phone. "You are making this worse. You need to calm down and get help." "Mom?" I asked, confused. "We are just trying to help you," she yelled. "Stop harassing us." The line went dead. I pulled the phone away and stared at it. She had been talking to me. Really talking to me. And then, someone had walked into the room. My father? Or one of the men in the vans? She was performing. She was creating evidence. Stop harassing us. If that call was recorded, it would sound like a distraught mother dealing with an unhinged daughter. But the whisper, the men in the vans, they are looking for the files. My phone buzzed with an email notification. It was from the fraud department at North Spire Credit Union. Subject: Document verification request. I opened it. Ms. Perez. Attached is the notarized power of attorney used to originate the home equity line of credit. Please review the signature and confirm if this is your endorsement. I opened the attachment. It was a PDF, a grainy scan of a document titled General Durable Power of Attorney. There was my name, Isabella Maria Perez, and there was my signature. It was a good forgery, but the loop on the P was too tight. I didn't write like that. I scrolled down to the bottom. Subscribed and sworn to before me this 12th day of November, 2025. There was a notary stamp, a circular ink seal, Briarwick title and registry, commission number 8842, Notary Public, Martin Perez. I stared at the screen until the pixels blurred. My father hadn't just used his workplace to process the paperwork. He had notarized his own fraud. He had used his state-issued stamp, his professional license, to validate a theft from his own daughter, Briarwick title and registry. That was the connection. The accident involved a van carrying financial documents. My mother said men from the office were watching the house. My father worked at Briarwick title. This wasn't just a family stealing from a rich fiancé. This was a family covering up a professional disaster. I felt a hand on my shoulder. I jumped. It was Mina. She was wearing oversized sunglasses and looking pale. She had parked her car at the curb and walked up behind me. "Bella," she said. "Kara texted me. She said you were here." I showed her the phone screen. He notarized it. "Mina," I said. "My dad. He stamped the forgery himself." Mina looked at the image, then looked away. She bit her lip. "Bella, I need to tell you something." She said, "What?" I looked at her. She looked guilty, deeply, sickly guilty. 2 months ago, she said, in December, your mom called me. I frowned. "My mom called you?" "She barely has your number. She called me at work," Mina said. She was crying. She begged me to take you out for drinks. She told me I had to talk you out of it. Talk me out of what? The wedding, Mina said. She said, Mina, you have to stop her. She cannot marry into that family. It will destroy her. Why didn't you tell me? I asked. My voice was quiet. Dangerous. Because I thought she was just being a jealous mother, Mina cried. I thought she was afraid of losing you. I didn't want to ruin your excitement. Bella, you were so happy. I thought if I told you, you would just fight with her. She knew. I said, 2 months ago. The LLC was formed in November. The loan was taken out in November. She knew they had set me up, and she knew that marrying Graham would bring scrutiny. Bella, I am so sorry. Mina said. I didn't answer her. I couldn't. The betrayal was layering up like sediment. My phone buzzed again, a text from an unknown number. Meet me at the Daily Grind on 4th. Alone. We need to settle this. Marjorie Holt. I looked at Mina. I have to go. I said, Bella, wait. I got in my car and left her standing on the sidewalk. The Daily Grind was a hipster coffee shop with exposed brick walls and overpriced lattes. Marjorie Holt sat in the back corner, wearing a cream-colored cashmere sweater that probably cost more than my car. She looked out of place, like a Persian cat sitting in a dumpster. I sat down across from her. I didn't order anything. Marjorie, I said. Bella, she said. She didn't smile. She folded her hands on the table. You look tired. I spent the night in my car because my husband thinks I am paranoid, and my father is trying to have me declared incompetent. I said, I am a little tired. Marjorie sighed, a delicate, pained sound. This is messy, she said. We don't like mess. Bella, the Holts value discretion. Is that why you were meeting a fixer in the parking lot of my wedding? I asked. Her eyes snapped to mine. They were cold, hard blue. You are observant, she said. That is good. It will help you understand the offer. What offer? Marjorie reached into her bag and pulled out a manila envelope. She slid it across the table. Inside is a check, she said. $50,000. It will cover the debt on your condo. It will clear the lien. I stared at the envelope. And what do I have to do? You agreed to a quiet civil annulment, she said, or a divorce, if you prefer the paperwork. We issue a joint statement saying that the stress of the event caused a mutual separation. No fault, no drama. And Graham? Graham agrees to let you go. She said, and my husband's firm, Holt and Brackenridge, agrees to represent you in the matter of your father's legal attacks. Pro bono. We will handle the conservatorship. We will make it go away. I looked at the envelope. It was a lifeline. It was money, legal protection, and a clean exit. But there was a hook. There was always a hook. And the condition? I asked. You pause contact with your family. She said, indefinitely. And you sign a non-disclosure agreement regarding any business dealings you may have inadvertently seen or heard about involving Graham's firm. I inadvertently heard about a settlement. I said, $320,000. Marjorie didn't flinch. Standard client confidentiality. She said, does Graham's firm know my father? I asked. I looked her dead in the eye. Does Holt and Brackenridge represent Briarwick Title and Registry? Marjorie paused. She picked up her coffee cup, took a slow sip, and set it down. Your father is a proud man. Bella, she said, that is not an answer. It is the only answer that matters. She said, pride makes men dangerous. It makes them borrow money they can't pay back. It makes them sign things they shouldn't sign. And it makes them look for scapegoats when the bill comes due. She leaned forward. We are offering you a lifeboat. Bella, your father is sinking. If you stay tied to him, you will drown. If you stay married to Graham, and you bring this mess into his house, you will be resented. Take the money. Let the firm clean up the legal noise. Start over somewhere else. I looked at the check. It was freedom. But it was also silence. If I took it, I would never know the truth. I would never know why my father did it. I would never know what Graham knew. I would just be paid to disappear. I slid the envelope back across the table. No, I said. Marjorie's expression didn't change, but the air around her grew colder. "You are making a mistake," she said. "I am still married to your son. Marjorie, if you want to get rid of me, you are going to have to do it in court, and if you represent me against my father, you have a conflict of interest, don't you? Because you know him." Marjorie stood up. She picked up her bag. "You are very brave," she said, "and very foolish. Graham always liked broken things. He thought he could fix them. I told him some things are broken because they are flawed at the core." She walked away, her heels clicking on the hardwood floor. I sat there for a long time. Pride makes men dangerous. She hadn't denied it. She had confirmed it. My father was in debt, and Graham's firm was involved. My phone rang. It was Kara. "Bella, you need to come back to the office," she said. Her voice was buzzing with adrenaline. I found the link. I drove back to Sloan Legal Aid. Kara was pacing around her small office, papers spread out over every surface. "Peregrine Consulting," she said, pointing to a diagram she had drawn on a whiteboard. I ran a skip trace on the registered agent. "The mailbox place?" I asked. "No, the corporate agent, the legal representative listed on the LLC filing. It is a generic service company in Delaware, but," she drew a red line to another box. "That same agent represents another company, Obsidian Logistics. I have never heard of it." I said, "You wouldn't have," Kara said. "It was a shell company implicated in a fraud case 3 years ago. A real estate developer was moving cash to bribe zoning officials. Obsidian Logistics was the funnel. And the law firm that represented the developer? The firm that set up the consulting arrangement that used Obsidian?" I felt a chill. "Holt and Brackenridge," I whispered. Kara nodded. "It was never proven in court. The developer took the fall. The firm claimed they were just drafting standard contracts and had no knowledge of the illicit activity, but they were close to it, Bella. Too close. So Peregrine Consulting, my fake company, is using the same dirty infrastructure as their old clients?" "Exactly." Kara said, "Your father couldn't have set this up alone. He is a title manager in the suburbs. He doesn't know how to structure Delaware shell companies with anonymous registered agents. Someone helped him. Someone who knew how to hide money." I said, Kara looked at me. "We need proof. Bella. We need to know if Graham knew." I went back to the condo. It was dark. I didn't turn on the lights. I sat on the couch and waited. I heard Graham's key in the lock at 8 o'clock. He walked in, looking exhausted. He was carrying Thai takeout. "Bella?" he called out. "I am here," I said from the darkness. He jumped, then let out a sigh. "Jesus. Bella, turn on a light. You are haunting this place." He flipped the switch. The room flooded with light. I squinted. "I need to ask you something." "Graham," I said. I had my phone tucked into the cushion beside me. "The voice memo app recording. Can we not do this tonight?" he asked, putting the food on the counter. "I have had a hell of a day. The partners are all over me about the wedding disaster." "Did you help my father set up Peregrine Consulting?" I asked. Graham stopped. He stood very still in the kitchen. "Peregrine what?" he asked. "Don't," I said. "Don't give me the lawyer voice. I know about the shell company. I know it shares a registered agent with Obsidian Logistics. I know your firm represented them." Graham turned around slowly. His face was unreadable. "Bella, you are talking about cases from years ago. Did you help him?" I asked. "Or did you just turn a blind eye while someone else in your firm did it?" Graham walked over to the couch. He sat down on the coffee table, facing me. He looked earnest. He looked sad. "I didn't help him. Bella," he said softly. "I swear to you, I didn't create that company, but you knew about it, didn't you?" He looked down at his hands. "I knew. I knew there were some irregularities." He said, "Irregularities?" I asked. "My identity was stolen. My credit is ruined. I didn't know it was you," he said, looking up. His eyes were pleading. "Bella, listen to me. We review documents for Briarwick Title sometimes. They are a vendor. I saw some files regarding a consulting arrangement. It looked messy, but it wasn't my case. I just initialed the review and passed it on." "You passed it on?" I asked. You saw a shell company set up by your future father-in-law, and you just passed it on? I didn't know it was illegal. He said, I thought he was just moving assets. People do that. Bella, rich people do that. I didn't know he was using your name until the wedding day, until the bank freeze. And when you found out? I asked. When you saw the empty seats and the bank notice? Did you tell me? I tried to protect you, he said. I paid the florist. I tried to keep you calm. I wanted to fix it before you found out so you wouldn't be hurt. I looked at him. He sounded so convincing. He believed his own spin. But the truth was simpler. You didn't want to fix it. I said, you wanted to manage it. You were comfortable with it. What does that mean? It means you liked me vulnerable. I said, you liked me broke. You liked me isolated from my family. It made me easy to control. It made me need you. Bella, that is sick. I love you. You love the version of me that doesn't ask questions. I said. I stood up. I grabbed my phone. I am not staying here. I said, Bella, stop. You are being irrational. I walked to the door. I recorded that. Graham, I said. He froze. You what? I recorded you admitting you reviewed the documents, admitting you knew my father was moving assets. Graham's face changed. The sadness vanished. The earnest husband evaporated. In his place was the partner at Holt and Brackenridge. You can't use that, he said coldly. Two-party consent state. Bella, it is inadmissible in court. I am not using it for court, I said. Opening the door, I am using it for leverage. I slammed the door. I went back to Kara's office. I slept on her couch. The next morning, Tuesday, the process server found me. He walked into the legal aid office at 9 a.m. He handed me a thick packet of documents. Isabella Perez? Yes, you have been served. I looked at the papers. Superior Court of Harrow Glen County. Notice of hearing. In re-conservatorship of Isabella Perez. Hearing, date, Monday, February 9th, 9 a.m. 5 business days. I looked at the petitioner line. Petitioner, Martin Perez. And below it, in smaller type, interested party. Briarwick, title and registry. I felt the blood drain from my face. Kara grabbed the paper. Interested party? She said. Why is a title company listed as an interested party in a family conservatorship? Because it is not a family conservatorship, I said. I looked at Kara. They are trying to silence me. If I am under conservatorship, I can't testify about the fraud. I can't sue the title company. I can't expose the document spill. Kara looked at the filing, her eyes wide. They are bringing the corporate lawyers, she said. Bella, this just went from a domestic dispute to a war. I looked out the window at the gray sky. My father had brought the institution down on me. He had weaponized his employer to crush his daughter. I wasn't just fighting my dad anymore. I was fighting the system that made men like him possible. Let them come, I said, but my hand was shaking as I held the paper. 5 days. 5 days to prove I was sane, while the whole world was conspiring to make me crazy. The next 4 days were measured not in hours, but in paper. Kara Sloane's office became a bunker. We covered every square inch of her mahogany conference table with the mundane debris of my life. If my father wanted to paint me as unstable, as a woman unraveling at the seams, we had to build a fortress out of facts. We pulled 5 years of employment records from the publishing house where I freelanced, showing steady, rising income. We printed 7 years of bank statements from my personal accounts, the ones I could still access, highlighting perfect credit card payments, a savings rate of 15%, and 0 overdrafts until the day of the wedding. We requested a notarized letter from my therapist, Dr. Aris, confirming that our sessions were for mild generalized anxiety common among high-achieving women, and that I had never displayed symptoms of psychosis, mania, or financial recklessness. It was humiliating. I had to prove I was a person. I had to prove I was capable of buying my own groceries and tying my own shoes. On Wednesday night, 10 piles of paper stood like sentinels on the table. Kara rubbed her temples, leaving a smear of ink on her forehead. "This is good," she said, her voice gravelly from exhaustion. It is a wall of competence, but it is defensive. We are proving you are not crazy. We are not proving he is a thief. We need a witness. I said, we need someone from inside the house. I looked at the photo of my family I had kept in my wallet. My father, stern and unsmiling. My mother, looking at him, Evan, looking at his phone. And Luke, my baby brother, the one who had called me, whispering. Dad said, don't talk. I know where he goes. I said, when he is scared. I drove to Glenhaven Crossing. It was a truck stop town halfway between Harrow Glen and the state line. A place of transient lights and diesel fumes. There was a diner there called the Iron Skillet that stayed open 24 hours. Luke used to go there in high school when he cut class. He said the noise of the highway helped him think. I found him in the back booth. He was wearing a hooded sweatshirt. The strings pulled tight. He was stirring a cup of black coffee that looked stone cold. He looked terrible. His skin was gray, and there were dark hollows under his eyes that spoke of sleepless nights. I slid into the booth across from him. He jumped, his knee hitting the table with a thud. Coffee sloshed over the rim of the mug. Bella. He breathed. You can't be here. I am here. Luke, I said. He looked around the diner, his eyes darting to the door, then the window. If he finds out I talk to you, he won't. I said. I parked around the back. Luke, look at me. He wouldn't. He stared at his hands. I saw the signature. Luke, on the loan documents. I saw the notary stamp. He flinched. I didn't know what it was. He whispered, I swear. Bella. He just put a stack of papers in front of me. He said, sign here, here, and here. He said it was trust paperwork. You are 26 years old. I said, you know what a loan document looks like. He squeezed his eyes shut. He bought me a car, he said. The words hung in the air, heavy and greasy like the smell of frying onions. What? My car loan, Luke said, his voice cracking. The one I was drowning in. The one for the truck. It was $12,000. He told me he took care of it. He said the family helps the family. And then he put the pen in my hand. I felt a wave of nausea. My father had bought my brother's integrity for $12,000. And the wedding? I asked. Why didn't you come? Why was the house empty? Luke looked up then, and I saw real tears in his eyes. He told us you were humiliated. He said, what? Dad came home on Friday night, Luke said. He gathered us in the living room. He looked destroyed. He told us that the Holts had called. He said Marjorie Holt had called him and told him that we weren't welcome, that we were low class, that we would embarrass you. I stared at him. That was a lie. Marjorie was cold, but she cared about appearances. She would never have uninvited the bride's family the night before. He told us that if we went, we would just be validating your betrayal. Luke continued. He said you had chosen them, that you wanted a wedding without us. He said the only way to keep our dignity was to vanish, to show you that we didn't need you. He framed it as loyalty. I whispered. He made us think we were protecting ourselves. Luke said, Mom cried all night. She wanted to call you, but Dad took her phone. He said, let her see what it feels like to be a Holt. And the accident? I asked. The van on Briarhook Parkway? Luke wiped his nose with his sleeve. That wasn't us. He said, we were already at the cabin. We left at 4 a.m. Then who was in the van? It was the courier, Luke said. From the office. Briarwick Title. Why was a title company van driving on a Saturday morning? Luke lowered his voice. Dad was moving files. He said, he called a private transport. He was clearing out his office archives, boxes of old deeds, closed files. He said he was archiving them, but then the van got hit, and the papers spilled. I said, Luke nodded. It is a mess. Bella, Dad has been on the phone screaming for 3 days. He is terrified. He says if the wrong paper gets found on the side of the road, he didn't finish the sentence. He didn't have to. I reached across the table and took his hand. His fingers were cold. Luke, I need you to testify, I said. He pulled his hand away like I had burned him. No, No way. He forged my signature. Luke, he stole my home. He is trying to have me declared insane so I can't stop him. If you don't tell the judge he lied to you, he's going to lock me away. I can't." Luke sobbed. "He is my dad. He pays my rent. He pays for everything." I stood up. I looked down at him. He was a man. But he was still a child. My father had made sure of that. "Then you are going to lose your sister." I said, "And it won't be because of a wedding. It will be because you chose a $12,000 truck over my life." I walked out of the diner. I didn't look back. I drove back to the city in a cold rage. The pieces were locking together. The conservatorship wasn't just about controlling my money. It was about credibility. If the documents in that van, the ones scattered on the highway, contained evidence of fraud, evidence involving Peregrine Consulting or the Holts, my father needed a scapegoat. If I was declared incompetent, if I was legally labeled as erratic and confused, he could claim I was the one who messed with the files. He could claim the shell company was my delusion, my chaotic project. He could pin the whole document spill on the crazy daughter who had been trying to sabotage the business. Kara agreed when I told her the next morning. "It is a containment strategy," she said. Pacing the office, "If those documents link Briarwick Title to the identity theft, he needs to discredit the victim. If the victim is crazy, the crime is just a misunderstanding. We need those records." I said, "We need to see what he was moving." I went to Briarwick Title and Registry at noon. It was a brick building in the professional park, respectable and dull. I walked through the glass doors. The lobby was quiet, carpeted in beige. I walked up to the receptionist. "I am Isabella Perez." I said, "I am requesting a copy of all transaction records filed under my name or my social security number in the last 6 months." The receptionist typed my name. Her eyes flicked up to me, then back to the screen. "I am sorry. Ms. Perez," she said, "that file is flagged." "Flagged for what?" "Legal review. I cannot access it. I am the subject of the file." I said, leaning over the desk, "By law, I have a right to see my own title documents. I am afraid you need to leave," a voice said behind me. I turned around. Standing there was Frank Miller. Frank was a big man, a former linebacker who had been my father's friend for 20 years. He had come to our 4th of July barbecues. He had given me a crisp $50 bill when I graduated high school. He worked as the head of security for the office park. "Frank," I said, "go home." "Bella," he said. His face was stony. He wasn't Uncle Frank today. He was muscle. "I want my records." "Frank, you are causing a disturbance," he said. "Your father told us you might come. He told us you aren't yourself. I am perfectly myself," I said, my voice rising. "I am the victim of fraud committed in this building." Frank stepped forward. He put a heavy hand on my arm. "Don't make me call the cops. Bella, it would break your mother's heart to see you dragged out of here in cuffs." I looked at his hand on my arm, the hand that had held a beer at my backyard birthday parties. "You are protecting a criminal, Frank," I said quietly. He didn't blink. "I am protecting the firm," he said. "Let's go." He escorted me out. He walked me all the way to my car. Standing there with his arms crossed until I started the engine, I drove away, shaking. They were all in on it. The silence wasn't just fear. It was an ecosystem. My father fed them, and they protected him. I went back to the hotel. I had to face Graham. I had been avoiding him for 2 days, staying at Kara's. But I needed my things. I needed my birth certificate, my passport, and the few pieces of jewelry I had left behind in the rush. I used my keycard. The light on the lock turned green. He hadn't changed it. The room was clean. Graham was sitting in the armchair by the window, reading a brief on his tablet. He looked up when I entered. He didn't look angry. He looked sad. He looked like the victim. "Bella," he said, setting the tablet down. "I was hoping you would come back." "I am just here for my things," I said, walking to the closet. He stood up and followed me. "We need to talk about this," he said. "This legal war. It is getting out of hand." "It got out of hand when my father stole my identity," I said, Pulling my suitcase down from the rack, Graham sighed. I spoke to my mother. He said, I froze. And? She thinks we can still fix this. She wants to set you up in an apartment, in the city, something nice, fully paid for a year, just so you can have some space. Space? I asked, turning to face him. To heal, he said, to let the lawyers talk without you being in the crossfire. You look exhausted. Bella, you are chasing ghosts. Let us handle the details. You mean, let you bury the evidence. I said. Graham's jaw tightened. You are being paranoid. Nobody is burying anything. We are trying to protect you from a public spectacle. If you go into that courtroom on Monday and scream about conspiracies, you are going to look insane, and Judge Vare will grant the conservatorship just to keep you safe from yourself. Is that a threat? It is reality, Graham said. He stepped closer. Look at the resources on the table. Bella, your father has the title company. My mother has the firm. You have, what? A legal aid lawyer and a brother who won't take your calls? He reached out, trying to touch my arm. Take the apartment, he said softly. Take the year off. Let the dust settle. I looked at him. He was handsome. He was persuasive. He was offering me a soft landing. All I had to do was surrender. No, I said. Graham's hand dropped. His face changed. The softness evaporated, replaced by a cold, sharp annoyance. You are making enemies you can't afford. Bella, he said. The words were quiet, but they cut deep. There it was, the leverage. Enemies you can't afford. He wasn't talking about money. He was talking about power. He was telling me that I was outclassed, outgunned, and that I should know my place. I didn't answer him. I turned back to the dresser. I opened the top drawer to check for my socks, and there it was, tucked in the back corner, underneath a stack of Graham's folded silk ties, was a small velvet box. My heart stopped. I reached in and pulled it out. I opened it. The gold locket gleamed under the hotel lights. My grandmother's locket, the one Graham had returned to me on the wedding day, the one I had left on the nightstand when I fled. He hadn't put it in my bag. He hadn't left it out for me to find. He had hidden it. I turned around, holding the box up. You found it in the chaos? I asked, my voice shaking. Graham looked at the box. He didn't look guilty. He looked annoyed that he had been caught. I put it there for safekeeping. He said, I didn't want the maids to take it. You put it under your ties. I said, you hid it. I was going to give it to you when you calmed down. When I calmed down? I repeated. You were holding it hostage. You knew this was the only thing I had left of her. You were keeping it so you could give it back as a reward for good behavior. It is just a necklace. Bella, it is leverage, I screamed. Everything is leverage to you people. My house, my credit, my family, my memories. You don't love anything, you just acquire it. I snapped the box shut and shoved it into my pocket. I am taking this, I said, and I am taking myself. I threw my clothes into the suitcase. Graham watched me, his arms crossed, leaning against the doorframe. He didn't try to stop me. He looked bored. He looked like a man who knew the game wasn't over. See you in court, he said as I walked out. I didn't go back to Kara's. I went to a payphone outside a library. I had one more call to make. I had found the name in the archives of the Harrow Glen Daily Wire. Tessa Wren. She was an investigative journalist who had written a series of articles 3 years ago about zoning corruption, the articles that had almost touched Holt and Brackenridge. I called the paper's tip line and asked for her extension. Wren, a voice answered, sharp, impatient. My name is Bella Perez, I said. I have documents linking Peregrine Consulting to Obsidian Logistics, and I have proof that Briarwick Title is using shell companies to hide assets. There was a silence on the line, then a rustle of paper. Peregrine Consulting? Tessa asked. That is a new name. It is my name, I said. They stole it, and I have the notarized forgery to prove it. Where can we meet? She asked. The park by the river, I said. The bench near the old carousel. 1 hour. I met her in the dark. The carousel was shuttered for the winter, a skeleton of iron ribs against the black sky. Tessa Wren was small, wrapped in a trench coat, smoking a cigarette that glowed like a red eye in the gloom. I handed her the folder. It contained copies of the credit report, the forgery, the trash scrap with the settlement numbers, and the LLC filing showing the shared registered agent. "This is dangerous stuff, kid," Tessa said, flipping through the pages by the light of a street lamp. "You are tying a local title company to a major law firm in a fraud scheme. Can you write it?" I asked. "I can write it," she said, "but I need more than paper. I need a source on the record. I am the source." I said, "They will come for you," she warned. "They will say you are disgruntled. They will say you are unstable. They are already doing that." I said, "My conservatorship hearing is on Monday. They are going to try to silence me legally. I need this story to break before the gavel comes down." Tessa looked at me. She took a long drag of her cigarette. "If I run this on Sunday," she said, "the judge will see it on Monday morning. It might look like you are trying to try the case in the press. It is the only way to show the judge why they want to lock me up." I said, "It is the motive." Tessa nodded. She put the folder in her bag. "Sunday morning," she said. "Get some sleep. You look like you're about to snap." I didn't sleep. I spent Sunday night on Kara's couch. I sat up, staring at the ceiling fans spinning slowly in the dark. Tomorrow was the hearing. Judge Vare, the family stability judge. I wasn't a lawyer. I wasn't a detective. I was a copy editor who liked quiet weekends and organized bookshelves. I wasn't built for this. But I thought about the locket in my pocket. To my brave girl. I thought about the empty chairs at my wedding. I thought about Luke in the diner, shaking over a truck loan. I stood up and walked to the bathroom mirror. I turned on the light. My face was pale. There were dark circles under my eyes. But the panic was gone. The hysteria was gone. I practiced the words. "My name is Isabella Perez. I am not confused. I am not unstable. I am the only person in this room telling the truth." I looked at my reflection. I didn't recognize the woman staring back. She looked harder. She looked dangerous. They had tried to erase me. They had tried to turn me into a ghost. Tomorrow, I was going to show them that I was flesh and blood. And I was going to scream. Room 304 of the Superior Court of Harrow Glen County smelled of lemon floor polish and old anxiety. The wood paneling was dark. The lighting was fluorescent and unforgiving, and the air was so cold I could feel the goosebumps rising on my arms beneath my blazer. I sat at the defendant's table next to Kara Sloan, my hands clasped so tightly in my lap that my knuckles were white. On the other side of the aisle sat my father. Martin Perez looked impeccable. He was wearing his navy Sunday suit, the one he wore to funerals and Easter service. His hair was combed back with that silver fox dignity that made bank tellers trust him and neighbors ask him for advice. He didn't look like a man who had stolen his daughter's identity. He looked like a man who was carrying the weight of the world on his shoulders. Next to him was a lawyer I didn't recognize, not a family law attorney from a strip mall, but a man in a charcoal suit that cost more than my car, with a briefcase made of leather so soft it looked like it could breathe. This was the corporate muscle. This was Briarwick Title's insurance policy. Judge Alton Vare entered the room. He was a small man with a face like a dried apple and eyes that had seen too many divorces to believe in love. He sat down, adjusted his glasses, and looked at the file in front of him with profound weariness. In the matter of the conservatorship of Isabella Perez, he said, his voice was dry paper, "Petitioner Martin Perez." My father's lawyer stood up. "Your Honor," he said smoothly, "we are here today with heavy hearts. This is not a petition we filed lightly. Mr. Perez is a devoted father who has watched his daughter spiral into a dangerous mental health crisis over the last 6 months. We are asking the court to intervene before she does irreparable harm to herself or her financial future." Judge Vare looked at me. "Ms. Sloan, are we contesting?" "Vigorously, Your Honor," Kara said. Standing up, we moved to dismiss the petition as baseless and fraudulent. The judge waved a hand. "Let us hear the petitioner. Mr. Perez, take the stand." My father walked to the witness box. He placed his hand on the Bible. He swore to tell the truth. He did it with the gravity of a saint. "Mr. Perez," his lawyer asked, Can you tell the court why you are seeking this conservatorship? My father looked at me. His eyes were wet. He offered me a small, sad smile. The kind of smile that said, "I forgive you for being broken. I love my daughter," he said softly. "I have always been proud of her independence. But recently, she has changed. She stopped coming to family dinners. She started spending money she didn't have. She became paranoid. She started accusing her mother and me of plotting against her. Can you give an example?" The wedding. My father said, he took a shaky breath. "She planned this lavish wedding to a man from a very wealthy family. We tried to warn her that she was overextending herself. On the day of the wedding, she suffered a breakdown. She started screaming that we were missing. Even though we had told her we couldn't attend because of a family emergency, she abandoned her own reception. She ran away." He paused, wiping his eye with a handkerchief. "I just want her safe, Your Honor. I want to stabilize her finances so she doesn't lose her home. I want her to get the help she needs." It was a masterclass. It was the performance of a lifetime. He wasn't angry. He was wounded. He was the protector. His lawyer introduced the evidence. "Exhibit A," he said, "bank records showing a foreclosure notice on Ms. Perez's primary residence." "Exhibit B," he continued, "a police report from the day of the wedding, showing Ms. Perez entered a precinct in her wedding dress, claiming a conspiracy involving a non-existent van accident." "Exhibit C," he finished, "text messages sent from Ms. Perez to her fiancé, Graham Holt." He put a transparency on the overhead projector. "I feel like I'm losing my mind. I don't know who to trust anymore. Maybe I should just disappear." I stared at the screen. I had sent that text 3 months ago, when I was stressed about the catering budget and Graham's mother was micromanaging the guest list. Taken out of context, stripped of the 20 messages before and after it, it sounded like a suicide note. The trap was perfect. It was built from real bricks of my life. Rearranged to build a prison. "Your witness," the lawyer said. Kara stood up. She walked to the podium. She didn't look at my father. She looked at the papers in her hand. "Mr. Perez," she said, "you stated that your daughter is financially unstable." "Yes," my father said. "Are you aware that the foreclosure notice on her home is due to a default on a home equity line of credit taken out in November?" "Yes," he said. "That is part of the reckless spending I mentioned." "And are you aware," Kara asked, her voice sharpening, "that the proceeds of that loan, $50,000, were deposited into an account for a company called Peregrine Consulting LLC?" My father didn't blink. "I believe she was trying to start a business," he said. Another impulsive decision. Kara picked up a document. "Mr. Perez, do you work at Briarwick Title and Registry?" "I do. And are you a licensed notary public?" "I am." Kara held up the scan of the power of attorney. "Is this your notary stamp on the document that authorized this loan?" My father squinted at it. "It appears to be." He said, "I notarize thousands of documents a year. If my daughter brought me paperwork, I would have notarized it for her. I trust her. Or I used to. So you are saying she signed this in front of you?" "Yes." Kara put the paper down. She picked up another one. "Mr. Perez, on the date this document was notarized, November 12th. Where were you?" "I was at work." "And where was your daughter?" "I assume she was at my office." Kara turned to the judge. "Your Honor, I would like to submit Defense Exhibit 1. This is a flight manifest and a credit card receipt. On November 12th, Isabella Perez was in Chicago for a publishing conference. She checked into the Palmer House Hilton at 10 a.m. and did not check out until November 14th. She was 500 miles away from Briarwick Title and Registry when this document was allegedly signed and notarized." The courtroom went silent. My father froze. For the first time, the mask slipped. A tiny tick appeared under his left eye. Perhaps I have the dates wrong," he stammered. "A notary log is a legal record." "Mr. Perez," Kara said, "you don't get the dates wrong, unless you notarized a forgery." "Objection," the corporate lawyer shouted. "Argumentative. Sustained," Judge Vare said. But he was looking at my father with new interest. Kara wasn't done. Mr. Perez, you claim your daughter is impulsive, yet the creation of Peregrine Consulting LLC involved filing articles of incorporation in Delaware, appointing a registered agent, and setting up a corporate bank account. Does that sound like impulsivity to you? Or does it sound like money laundering? Objection. Kara turned to the gallery. I call Luke Perez to the stand. My father's head snapped around. He hadn't expected this. He thought Luke was broken. He thought Luke was safe. The doors opened. Luke walked in. He looked terrible. He was wearing a wrinkled button-down shirt that was too big for him. He was shaking so hard that when he sat in the witness chair, the microphone rattled. He didn't look at me. He didn't look at Dad. He looked at the floor. Luke, Kara said gently, you signed an affidavit supporting this conservatorship. You stated that your sister was acting erratically. Luke nodded. Yes. Why did you sign that statement? Luke took a breath. It sounded like a rattle in his chest. Because, he whispered. Speak up, son, Judge Vare said. Because my dad told me to. Luke said. His voice cracked. Did you write the statement? Kara asked. No. He brought it home typed. He told me Bella was in trouble. He told me she was going to ruin the family if we didn't stop her. Did he offer you anything in exchange for your signature? Luke closed his eyes. Tears leaked out. He paid off my truck, he said. $12,000. He said it was a loyalty bonus. The silence in the room was absolute. It wasn't the dramatic silence of a movie. It was the heavy, suffocating silence of a family breaking apart in public. My father was staring at Luke. His face was purple. He looked like he wanted to reach across the railing and strangle him. Kara looked at the judge. Your Honor, the witness statement was coerced. The financial instability was manufactured via identity theft. The petitioner is not a concerned father. He is a co-conspirator covering his tracks. Judge Vare leaned back. He took off his glasses and rubbed the bridge of his nose. Mr. Perez, he said to my father's lawyer, do you have a redirect? Before the lawyer could answer, the back doors of the courtroom swung open with a loud bang. A woman in a trench coat walked in. She was followed by a man in a suit who looked like he billed by the second. Tessa Wren. Your Honor, the man shouted. I apologize for the interruption. I am counsel for the Harrow Glen Sentinel. We have an emergency motion to quash and preserve evidence relevant to this proceeding. Judge Vare looked annoyed. This is family court. Counselor. What evidence? We have reason to believe that the assets at the center of this conservatorship, specifically the entity Peregrine Consulting, are tied to a document spill that occurred on Briarhook Parkway on Saturday. The lawyer said, we are serving a subpoena on the petitioner, Martin Perez, and his employer, Briarwick Title, for all records regarding that transport. My father stood up. This is absurd, he shouted. That was a traffic accident. It has nothing to do with my daughter. Sit down. Mr. Perez, Judge Vare barked. The judge looked at the Sentinel's lawyer. Are you suggesting, he asked slowly, that this conservatorship is being used to shield a corporate liability investigation? We are suggesting, the lawyer said, that if Ms. Perez is declared incompetent today, she will be unable to testify about the use of her identity to facilitate that liability. Judge Vare looked at me. Then he looked at my father. Then he looked at the corporate lawyer, who was suddenly checking his watch like he had somewhere else to be. We will take a recess, Judge Vare said. I want counsel in my chambers. Now. Graham was called to the stand after the recess. He looked perfect. Of course he did. He was a partner at Holt and Brackenridge. He knew how to sit, how to speak, how to charm a judge. Mr. Holt, Kara said, you are the husband of the proposed ward. I am, Graham said. He looked at me with sad, puppy-dog eyes. Did you have any knowledge of the business dealings of your father-in-law prior to this week? Graham shook his head. None. I keep my professional and personal lives separate. Kara walked to the table. She picked up the recording transcript I had made. It wasn't admissible as audio, but she could use it to impeach him if he lied. Mr. Holt, did you ever review documents for Briarwick Title involving a consulting arrangement with Peregrine Consulting? Graham hesitated. Just for a fraction of a second. We review thousands of documents, he said. It is possible. Is it possible? Kara pressed. That you recognize the name on the LLC filing as your wife's name? No, Graham said. It was a common name. I didn't make the connection. Really? Kara asked. You saw a document for a shell company, signed by an Isabella Perez, notarized by a Martin Perez, and you didn't think to ask your fiancé about it? I didn't see the signature page. Graham said quickly, I only reviewed the header. Ah, Kara said. She smiled. A shark's smile. But in your firm's billing records, which we subpoenaed this morning, you billed 2.5 hours for review of execution and notary attestation for that specific file. How could you review the notary attestation without seeing the signature? Graham's face went pale. He had been caught in a lie, a small, bureaucratic lie, but a lie under oath. I may have overlooked it, he stammered. It was a busy day, or, Kara said, leaning in. You saw it. You knew your father-in-law was using your fiancé as a financial mule, and you said nothing because it gave you leverage over both of them. Objection. Calls for speculation. Sustained, Judge Vare said. But Mr. Holt, you will step down. Your credibility is strained. Graham stood up. He smoothed his suit jacket. He looked at me as he walked past the table. His eyes were cold. Dead things. Judge Vare gathered his papers. The courtroom was silent. This court finds, he said, his voice echoing, that there are significant questions regarding the validity of the evidence presented by the petitioner. He looked at my father. Mr. Perez, your application for an emergency conservatorship is denied. I let out a breath I'd been holding for 5 days. Kara squeezed my arm. However, Judge Vare continued, given the allegations of identity theft and coercion, and the potential involvement of outside corporate entities, I am referring this matter to the District Attorney's Office for a fraud investigation. I am also appointing a temporary guardian ad litem to oversee the financial assets in question, not to control Ms. Perez, but to preserve the evidence. He banged the gavel. This hearing is adjourned. It wasn't a total victory. I was still under a microscope, but I was free. I was my own person. The courtroom cleared out. My father's lawyer packed his bag and left without saying a word to him. The corporate shield had cracked, and the rats were fleeing. I walked toward the exit. Bella. I stopped. My father was standing by the gallery railing. He looked older than he had an hour ago. The confident patriarch was gone. He looked like a man who had gambled everything on a single hand and lost. I turned to face him. It is over. Dad, I said, Tessa has the story. The DA is going to see the files. You are going to prison. My father shook his head slowly. He stepped closer. He lowered his voice so only I could hear. You think you won, he said. I did win. I stopped you. He laughed. It was a dry, rasping sound. You stopped me. He agreed. But you still don't understand what is happening. Bella, you think I did this for money? You think I forged your name because I wanted a new car? Why then? I asked. Why did you do it? He looked toward the door where Graham had exited. I was trying to pay them back, he whispered. Pay who? The Holts, he said. The firm. Briarwick. Title isn't just a title company. Bella, it is a funnel, and Holt and Brackenridge is the reservoir. I owed them. I used your name because I thought if you were family, if you were married to Graham, they wouldn't come after the debt. I thought it would protect you. You thought stealing my identity would protect me? I thought marrying into the family would protect you, he hissed. But you didn't understand. You walked into a den of lions wearing a meat dress. He leaned in close. His eyes were terrified. You destroyed the setup. Bella, you exposed the shell company. You brought the Sentinel into it. You think Graham is just a bad husband? Graham is a cleaner, and you just made a very big mess. He pulled back. He straightened his tie. I'm going to prison, he said. That is fine. Prison is safe. But you? You are out here alone now. He walked past me, flanked by 2 bailiffs. I stood in the hallway. The air was cold. Graham is a cleaner. I walked out of the courthouse. The sun was shining, but it didn't feel warm. I saw Tessa Wren on the steps, talking to a camera crew. I saw Kara talking to Luke. who was smoking a cigarette with shaking hands. I got in my car. I didn't go to the condo. I didn't go to the hotel. I drove to the edge of town, to a motel called the Bluebird. I paid cash for a room. I sat on the bed. I checked my phone. There were 20 missed calls from Graham, 10 from his mother, and 1 voicemail from a restricted number. I pressed play. There was static. Then a voice. It wasn't Graham. It wasn't my father. It was a voice I didn't recognize. Smooth, synthetic, digitally altered. "Congratulations, Ms. Perez," the voice said. "You won your day in court. You have your freedom." Pause. "But freedom is expensive. You kept digging. You pulled the thread. Now the whole tapestry is unraveling. You think your father was the problem? Your father was just the gatekeeper." Pause. "You should have taken the apartment, Bella. You should have taken the money. Now you have embarrassed people who do not like to be embarrassed." Then, the voice started to hum. It was a low, melodic tune, a lullaby. "Hush, little baby. Don't say a word." My blood froze. It wasn't just any lullaby. It was the specific, off-key version my grandmother used to hum to me when I had nightmares. She changed the rhythm. She hummed the high notes low. Only family knew that version. Only the people inside the house. The humming stopped. "Papa's gonna buy you a mockingbird," the voice whispered. "And if that mockingbird don't sing, Papa's gonna break its wing." Click, the line went dead. I sat in the motel room. The silence pressed against my ears. My father was gone. My marriage was a lie. My home was a crime scene. I clutched the locket in my pocket. To my brave girl, I wasn't safe. The real story hadn't ended in the courtroom. It had just begun. I walked to the window and looked out at the parking lot. A black sedan was parked under the street lamp. The engine was running. I closed the curtains. I locked the door, and I waited. Thank you so much for listening to On My Wedding Day. Not a single family member showed up, not even my father who. This story of Bella Perez has been a journey through betrayal, gaslighting, and the dark secrets that families keep to survive. I would love to know, where are you listening from right now? Are you tuning in from the busy streets of New York, the quiet countryside of England, or somewhere halfway across the world? Please let me know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this story and want to hear more twisted tales of family drama and revenge, please make sure to subscribe to the Revenge Stories channel. Don't forget to hit the notification bell so you never miss a part. And finally, I want to hear your thoughts. Do you think Bella is truly safe? Who do you think left that voicemail? Was it Graham or someone even more powerful? Share your theories in English in the comments section. I read every single one. Until next time, stay safe and watch who you trust.